assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Taham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Eshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today we are on Canto 3, Chapter 27, Text 13. Evam trivrid ahankaro Evam trivrid ahankaro Bhutendriya manomai Bhutendriya manomai Svabhasayar lakrito nena Swabhakshayar lakrito nena Sad abhasena satyadruk Sad abhasena satyadruk Evam trivrid ahankaro Bhutendriya manomai Swabhasayar lakrito nena Sad abhasena satyadrik. Please chant. Ehang trivrid ahankaro Bhutendriya manomai Swabhasayar lakrito nena Sad abhasena satyadruk. Evam Trivruda Hankaro Bhutendriya Manomaihi Swabhasar Lakshito Nena Sad Abhasena Satyadrik Evam Trivruda Hankaro Bhutendriya Manomaihi Swabhasar Lakshito Nena Sad Abhasena Satyadrik. Vaishnavis? Evam Trivruda Hankaro Bhutendriya Manomaihi Swabhasar Lakshito Nena Sad Abhasena Satyadrik Evam Trivruda Hankaro Bhutendriya Manomaihi Swabhasar Lakshito Nena Sad Abhasena Satyadrik Evam. Thus, Trivrit, threefold. Ahankara, false ego. Bhuta Indriya Manaha Mai, consisting of the body, senses, and mind. So Abhasaihi, by its own reflections. Lakshitaha is revealed. Anena, by this. Sad Abhasena, by a reflection of Brahman. Satyadruk, the self-realized soul. So the translation reads, the self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and mind. Okay, so we can read this responsively. The self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and mind. Okay, so Prabhupada's purport. A conditioned soul thinks, I am this body. But a liberated soul thinks, I am not this body. I am spirit soul. This I am is called ego, or identification of the self. I am this body, or everything in relation to this body is mine, is called false ego. But when one is self-realized and thinks that he is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord, that identification is real ego. One conception is in the darkness of the threefold qualities of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. The other is in the pure state of goodness called Shuddha Sattva, or Vasudeva. When we say that we give up our ego, this means we give up our false ego, but real ego is always present. When one is reflected through the material contamination of the body and the mind in false identification, he is in the conditioned state or conditional state. But when he is reflected in the pure stage, he is called liberated. The identification of oneself with one's material possessions in the conditional stage must be purified, and one must identify himself in relation with the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, one accepts everything as an object of sense gratification, and in the liberated state, one accepts everything for the service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness, devotional service, is the actual liberated stage of a living entity. Otherwise, both accepting and rejecting on the material platform or in voidness or impersonalism are imperfect conditions for the pure soul. By understanding of the pure soul, called Satyadrik, one can see everything as a reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A concrete example can be given in this connection. A conditioned soul sees a very beautiful rose, and he thinks that the nice aromatic flower should be used for his own sense gratification. This is one kind of vision. A liberated soul, however, sees the same flower as a reflection of the Supreme Lord, and he thinks this flower, beautiful flower, is made possible by the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it belongs to the Supreme Lord and should be utilized in his service. These are two kinds of vision. The enjoyment and the conditioned soul sees a flower for his own enjoyment, and the devotee sees a flower as an object to be used in the service of the Lord. In the same way, one can see the reflection of the Supreme Lord in one's own senses, mind, and body. In everything. With that correct vision, one can engage everything in the service of the Lord. It is stated in Bhukti Rasamrita Sindhu that one who has engaged everything, his vital energy, his wealth, his intelligence, and his words in the service of the Lord, or who desires to engage all these in the service of the Lord, no matter how he is situated, is to be considered a liberated soul, or Satyadrik. Such a man has understood things as they are. Evam trivriddhankaro bhutendriya mano mahi swabhasar lakshito nena sad abhasena satyadrik. Thus, the self-realized soul is reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and mind. So, reading through Burijan's Unveiling His Lotus Feet, which is an explanation of the Srimad Bhāgavatam, in this section he states that this verse is a further elucidation of the verse that Narada Muni read yesterday, the 3.27.12. So we hear the same basic metaphor, that there is some kind of reflection going on. And yesterday it was a reflection of the sun. And when the sun reflects off a body of water or some kind of a reflective surface, like a shiny floor or a piece of tin foil or something like that, then it creates a pattern on the wall. In graphic design and imagery, that's called a caustic. But the idea is that the sun is reflecting off something, and then it goes onto something that would be dark. And it may be obvious what that reflection is coming from, and it may sometimes not be obvious what that reflection is coming from. And there are several Sanskrit words that are associated with this kind of reflection. One of them is abhasa. So if you look up abhasa, abhasa is also one of those words that has a lot of meanings. Not as many as what we were saying the other day, for some other words, but abhasa. Yoga has zillions of meanings, but abhasa has, probably about 30 or something like that. Among them are reflection and essence, or in some cases, resemblance, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things. And also, pratibimba has a similar connotation of when one sees oneself in the mirror, that's a pratibimba. It's a reflection also. So at any rate, Prabhupada highlights the word satyadrik. So drik is a Sanskrit root, and from drik it turns into drish. And drish is the root of all these darshan, drishyate, to see, all these kind of Sanskrit verbs and nouns that are evolving from drik or drish to see. So satya, of course, is truth, truth seeing. So a person who is satya drik is someone who sees the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is not very difficult. We've been talking about the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita in the Gita from Zero session. And transcendental knowledge, or the truth, is not difficult to explain. You can explain in a couple of sentences, and that is that everything comes from Krishna, and we are servants of Krishna, and we should offer everything back to Krishna. That's it. If you got that, you pretty much got it. You don't have to go get a college degree in something or take a very difficult or detailed class. However, it's one thing to be able to rattle it off as a concept, and it's another thing to be able to apply it in one's life as a principle that guides what we do, not just every once in a while, but moment to moment, day by day. So that's the difficult part, or as Shakespeare would say, therein lies the rub. So that's what's a little bit harder to do. And this whole section, from 1 to 9 was what it takes to be liberated in this particular chapter of Srimad Bhāgavatam. And then this next few verses, in these verses, were all about kind of an example of how a person can be liberated, which is similar to the way chapter 4 works in Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 4 is called Transcendental Knowledge. And so you can think transcendental knowledge, and then, well, what's the chapter about? It's about where knowledge comes from, its history, how Krishna first spoke it, what it is, how one gets it, how one loses it, how society comes into possession of it, how society loses it, and what kind of things we have to do to be able to guarantee that we get knowledge without it being scrambled with something else. And then there's this whole big section of what are the symptoms of someone in knowledge. So Krishna is very thorough on the way he does these things, So if you're going to talk about knowledge, all these aspects of it are important to know: what it is, where it comes from, how you get it, how you lose it, how it comes into society, how it gets lost in society, and very importantly, what are the symptoms of someone who has it? And so here, Prabhupada in the purport explains what the symptom is. The one who doesn't have knowledge thinks everything is for my enjoyment. The one who does have knowledge thinks everything is for Krishna's enjoyment. Very simple. So in one sense, this is what's the difference between matter and spirit. Pure and simple. There's nothing more to it than that. It's not like if we say, well, is this matter or is it spirit? Depends on how you're using it and how you view it. If you see this as used for Krishna's service, then you see it as spirit. If you see this as being used for your own gratification, it's matter. It's just as simple as that. A knife, an apple, a cup, a software program, a car, Boeing 747, all these things can, or as Prabhupada said, even a nuclear missile can or cannot be spiritual, depending on its use. So also, strangely enough, we're in the spiritual world right now, and everything in this room is purely spiritual. But do we see it that way? And the answer is probably not. At least not, I don't, not completely. That's because there is still some abhasa, some reflection, some shadow. Abhasa also means shadow. There's something interfering. So when we say that the individual is in Maya or in material consciousness, Prabhupada says we think, I am this body. But what else do we think? If we were going to, I'm going to ask our whole audience here, do we have the microphone set up? Is it actually functioning? Okay. So along with being in material consciousness, we think, I'm this body. What else do we think that's indicative of being in material consciousness, as this verse says? First reflected in the threefold ego, and then in the body, mind, and sense. What other things are associated with material consciousness? Can you hold the mic for him there?
Everything's meant for my sense gratification.
Right, everything is for my sense gratification. What else?
Besides that, we have a tendency to think like to want to be God. So if somebody gets in the way of my doing something, we become angry because we think that my will should be executed.
Right. We think my desires and my plans should be enacted. That's another aspect of it. We also think that relatives, all these people, are my relatives. What else do we think? You can see how detailed this consciousness goes, all the things that we misthink in the process of being in material consciousness.
I was also thinking the verse in chapter 3 of the Gita, Kartahamiti Manyate.
Yeah, right.
I'm the doer.
I'm the doer.
And even in Krishna consciousness, this is very present.
Right.
I'm
That
the preacher, I'm the book distributor.
Right. That through my strong muscles, I can do many things, or through my clever intellect, I can accomplish several things, and so I am the doer. What else do we think?
Like this is my nation, I belong to here.
Yeah, my country, right. I have this, I'm part of this country and not some other, I'm part of the USA, so everybody wants to be in the USA, so, we have that kind of consciousness as well.
We think that the words and images that are coming into our mind are coming from us, that they are us.
That what?
The words and images that are in
Right.
our mind are us,
Right.
and that we have to do what they say.
That's a subtle one. Most people would never guess that I am not the mind. People are convinced after being in Krishna consciousness for some time that they're not the body. But to realize that you're not the mind, that's a slippery one, actually, that sometimes you think like that and sometimes you don't think like that. Although, just think of all that chatter that goes on through the course of a day. Is that really you? I hope not. Yeah, can you give?
Because it's so subtle in nature.
Yeah, it's so
It's been
subtle.
deep-rooted since time immemorial.
Right. So we identify with the mind. We identify with our desires. This is my desire. That's the difficult one, We have these desires, and we carry them around from life to life like a suitcase, when we're traveling from one place to another. We have this desire, and wow, as Prabhupada says in one purport somewhere, that around the time of adolescence, the supersoul reminds the living entity of what they wanted to do in previous lives, So that's why around that time kids just think, yeah, death metal, that's what I'm going to do. Or I want to go jump out of airplanes. Or I want to join the army. Or, I would really like to be on a boat, and they join the merchant marine or something like that. They go traveling on boats, These things just come out of the blue because in previous lives, that living entity had that inclination, and it wasn't completely satisfied. So, as kids, we don't really think, kids have all kinds of desires. Mostly it's about, dinosaurs and, computer games and things like that. But later on, they get this kind of calling. Okay, so just to recap, here are a few things that I thought that we identify with when we think they're a body. We think I'm the body. We think I have these desires are my desires. I have my plans, as somebody said. My plan should be executed, not somebody else's. I have relatives, so these relatives are mine, even though we got put in daiva, what is it? Karmana deva netrena jantur deho papataye, strio pravisha udaram pumsam reta kanashraya, that under direction of the material energy and according to the modes of nature, a living entity is injected into the womb of a woman in a particle of male semina. So we were, according to this Karmana Daiva Netrena, this cosmic arrangement, we were injected somewhere on the planet into a particular womb, and now that country becomes my country. That womb becomes my mother. The other people came out of that same womb, they become my siblings. The people who were in a similar family that my mother's came out of that womb, they become my family, et cetera, et cetera. So all these are part of it. And we think we have position. This is my position. I worked hard and now I'm in this position. You know, Prabhupada always talks about government work, that if you make it to government work in India, your whole life is set. You know, you are given all kinds of money and your position is set forever. I have a history. You really think about the things that happened in your early life, you know. They seem like they happened in a dream to me now, you know. It's so insubstantial. And, you know, the place where I grew up, I mentioned this last week, that, you know, it's changed very significantly. And it could just as well have happened in a dream. So, and that we will live forever. We have this false feeling that we will live forever. Of course, everybody thinks, I am the best. That we are at the top of the heap of whatever it is that we do or think, you know. So these are just some. Just think about how many of those illusions are there, how thick they are. And we may be free from some of them, but we may not be so free from others of them, you know. And this is what is an impediment. And the way this verse is, you know, discussing about reflections, I thought this is really very, very similar to what in the Harinam Chintamani gets discussed, you know, that we have, as we know, 3 stages of chanting the holy name. There is Namabhas, Namaparad actually is the bottom stage, and Namabhas, and then what's the top one? Shuddhanam, right? So Namaparad, Namabhas, and Shuddhanam. So Namabhas, here we have the word abhas again, which, as we said before, means reflection or shadow. It is sometimes described like before the sun comes up. You can't see the sun yet, but the sun's about to come up, so it's not dark anymore. Everything is illuminated, but we don't see the sun yet. And then, of course, when the sun rises, then we see the full brightness of the sun. But even before the sun manifests itself, there is an illumination, which is very different from the way it is at night, when there's no sun and there's no illumination at all. So that's what the full sunrise of the holy name is like. But most of us are working towards that full sunrise of the holy name. And what keeps us from the full sunrise of the holy name is called the mist of anartha. So anarthas are unwanted things. And if you've read the Harinam Chintamani, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote it. But he wrote it as a dialogue between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. So Lord Chaitanya is asking Haridas Thakur about the holy name. And Haridas Thakur says, my dear Lord, you know all these things. Why are you asking me? And the Supreme Lord says that he wants to hear it from his mouth. And then Haridas Thakur says, all right, so I shall describe the glories of the holy name, not even thinking if what I say is correct or not. At any rate, that's how it unfolds in the Harinam Chintamani. And he explains that the mist of Anartha is comprised of three different things, which he calls Asat Trishna, Hridaya Dorbalyam, and Aparad. So, Asat Trishna. So, Trishna is to be thirsty. Asat, for things that are not permanent. So, the lust for temporary material things, Asat Trishna, is one of those things which keeps us from experiencing the full sunrise of the holy name. It keeps us in Namabhas. Asat Trishna. Another one is Hridaya Dorbalyam, which means Hridaya means heart. Dor, it means it's a prefix for bad. Balyam is strength, so it's a bad strength of the heart. Usually, it's translated as weakness of heart. So, weakness of heart means we know the right thing, but we just don't do it. You know, we, for some reason, fizzle. We start to do it, but we don't really get off the ground. So this is an important thing, because this Hridaya Dorbalyam is kind of one of the things that we've been talking about, and I've been thinking about a lot lately, this fact that we hear all this philosophy, and we know it, we can recite it in our sleep sometimes, but when it comes to actually doing it, if we start to do it, we notice there's an emotional response to it, and that emotional response may not be positive. We may have a hesitative response, or we may even have a sort of negative response. We may feel repelled or not very eager. And this is a product of our past sinful life. It's a product of our bad habits, et cetera, et cetera. So when we attempt to do something that's Krishna conscious, we sometimes have this internal mountain we have to crawl over, a mountain of our own negative motivation to do that thing, our desire to avoid it rather than do it. And if you're able to be introspective, you begin to see these things happening, and then you can gradually see how, okay, I'm getting better at this. I'm not so averse to this anymore. I'm able to do it more and more. And in this way, we make incremental progress towards spiritual life. So the holy name is likened to sometimes the sun. Again, we have this analogy like Narada Muni was telling us about yesterday. We have the sun, and the sun is huge. It's way bigger than the earth. And so what's the possibility of a cloud blocking the sun? The cloud is very small compared to even the earth, what to speak of the sun. And the sun is so very powerful. Yet, if that cloud is between you and the sun, that cloud blocks the sun for you. So small cloud. So this is the mist, or sometimes the cloud of Anartha. And here is where we have the word abhasya again, shadow. It creates a block or a shadow of the sun, of the pure holy name. So the pure glory of the holy name does not rise in our heart when we chant the holy name, because we have, as we were saying, asat trishna, hankering for material things, hridaya dorbalyam, weakness of heart, and the third one is aparad. And we recite those in the morning, every morning here at least, you know, the 10 offenses against the chanting of the holy name, which are listed in the Padma Puran. And those offenses if we pay attention to them and try to remove them from our consciousness, then we'll keep, and that one is the hardest to get rid of. In the general process of Krishna consciousness, Hridaya Daurbalyam and Asat Trishna will be more or less automatically kind of knocked down by our practice of Krishna consciousness. However, if we cling to offenses, that may block our progress. So we learn that one can, that's what that verse that we chant every morning, or at least Ram Roy chants it, that, if one is infested with the 10 offenses against the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and despite his endeavor to chant the holy name for many births, he will not get the love of God, which is the ultimate goal. So this is, a very important thing to understand. So if we can remove these 10 offenses, then we can move forward in the chanting. Of course, the mother of all the offenses is inattention. So we learn that Namabhas has 4 basic attitudes in the Harinam Chintamani. One of them is parihasya, which is chanting the holy name in joking. One of them is stoba or stoma, sometimes it's called, chanting the holy name in a derogatory or even offensive mood. Another one is called, Sanketa, chanting the holy name but indicating something different than the holy name. So Sanketa is where somebody chants the holy name but they're not intending to chant the holy name. There's a story about one of the associates of Lord Chaitanya. He went to a Muslim king, and he said, I should get him to chant Hare Krishna. So in the middle of the night, he's knocking on this king's window with rocks. And, everybody's thinking, this guy is nuts. He's going to get killed for this, And so he's knocking on the door, and the Muslim ruler comes. He says, what do you want in the middle of the night like this? And he goes, my dear Muslim ruler, just please chant Hare Krishna. And the Muslim ruler said, it's the middle of the night. Go home. I'm not going to chant Hare Krishna right now. And go away. And the devotee said, but you just did chant Hare Krishna. So this is an example of Sanketa. Or, of course, as we say, if you happen to work for the Ramada Inn and you answer the phone, Ramada Inn, you're chanting Rama, Rama all day long. So you certainly aren't thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because you're using the name over and over again, you are actually chanting the holy name. But it's chanting the holy name in Namabhas. In this case, this Namabhas flavor is called Sanketa, chanting, indicating something else. And then, Haridas Thakur explains that there's vyavadan, separation. If somebody is separating the syllables of Hari with some other syllable, they don't get the benefit of chanting the holy name. It's not even Sanketa. So he uses the word Haritaki. So Hatikari, I think that's what it is, Hatikari. So you have Ha and Ri, but in between is the syllable Tika, Hatikari. So that does not count as Sanketa because there is a syllable in between. So the syllable has to be there, has to not be there. So, but he says there's another kind of vyavadan. That's called varna vyavadan, where a syllable intervenes. But there's another kind of vyavadan called tattva vyavadan, where one has a mayavada conception of the holy name, which blocks all the potency of the holy name. So if one is chanting the holy name in a mood of trying to become Krishna or merge into the Brahman, then one can chant like that for millions of births and it won't make any difference. That's tattva vyavadan So we have Varna Vyavadan and Tattva Vyavadan. So the fourth kind of Vyavadan, or no, fourth kind of Namabhas, is Namabhas called Hela, and that's the one we're concerned with. That is chanting the holy name inattentively. So even if one does chant inattentively, one will still get benefit from the holy name. Haridas Thakur explains that Namabhas, even though it's not perfected, will still give someone every benediction possible that one could get if one even continues just to chant in Namabhas. However, it will never bestow prema. So one has to remove the abhas portion, And for the most part, we're not chanting the holy name in joking. We're not chanting the holy name in derision. We're not chanting the holy name indicating something else, generally speaking. What we're doing is chanting the holy name in hela, or in inattention. So if we can remove that part of namabhas will be gone. So the whole goal of spiritual life is to get rid of these shadows or reflections. And Haridas Thakur explains that the holy name in the beginning is like the same example that we heard in yesterday's verse. It's like the sun reflecting off some kind of water pot where there's some container that has water. And this reflection is called a abhas. Now, if the water is moving, then there's a distortion, and it can be called pratibimba namabhas. But if the water is not moving, then it's called chaya namabhas. So chaya is another thing that a Sanskrit word that indicates nearness to, approximately, not fully, partial, like that. So chaya means we're partially experiencing the holy name, chaya namabhas. But the pratibimba namabhas means that it's been distorted. In this case, what distorts the holy name is a Mayavadic conception of it, because sometimes Mayavadis, they do Harinam. Sometimes they do kirtan. Sometimes, because they've recognized that people like to come together and do kirtan. So Mayavadis do it. Of course, their whole conception is that this whole business is just to get people to come in the door, so eventually they can learn that we're all one and we merge with the Brahman, And their concept of the holy name is that it's material, and that Krishna's material, these are material forms, and that one will transcend them to understand the real nature of the universe, which is all one in the Brahman. So this is called sometimes pratibimba namabhas, and such namabhas will never give one any significant Krishna prema. So one has to give up, as Haridas Thakur puts it, one has to give up this reflection or distortion, in this case, of the holy name. Then one can practically chant the holy name and go from, he says actually that this pratibimba namabhas, a Mayavad conception of the holy name is not properly even namabhas, it's namaparad. So it's a thing that will keep us from making progress. So I want to leave some time for questions and comments. I thought I'd put that in because it seemed to be similar to the kind of wording and metaphors that we were using in this last two verses. So anyone have any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. I didn't get this point in the Vyavadhan you said. So there is Varna Vyavadhan and Tattva Vyavadhan. So what happens when there is Varna Vyavadhan? Like
Varna Vyavadan doesn't allow the holy name to have any potency, you know. So if we chant Hare Krishna, but we substituted syllables in between Hare and between Krishna, it's no longer even Hela, or it's no longer even Sanketa, rather, you know, that if someone chants Ramada in, they're actually getting the benefit of the holy name. You know, or we have all sorts of things, computer Rama, we have, auto Rama, et cetera, people who decided to name their company something like that, they're actually getting the benefit of the holy name, you know, because the Rama part is there, you know. Actually, in New Zealand, there's a city called Rama Rama, but there's no Krishna Krishna.
In Slovakia, they have plant-based butter that calls Rama. And it's everywhere in the shop.
Yeah. You'll find that actually, there's Don Kirshner's rock concert, you know, so he's got a name, Don Kirshner. So just by his name, he is chanting the holy name. So that, the fact that family, whatever, they had some foreign name and they shortened it to that. It's the way most people do. But they chose a fortunate group of syllables to shorten it to, that whenever somebody calls them, or they call somebody, or they tell somebody their name, they're actually chanting the holy name, you know. And, this is probably before all of your time, but they used to have this television broadcast, this rock concerts. They would do it once a week, and they would televise it on TV, and the person who organized his name was Don Kirshner. And so he's got that name. Actually, one time on Sankirtan, there was a young man that came, I forget where it was, somewhere in the Midwest, and his name was Harry Kirshner. And I thought, this can't be real. I thought, this is like something out of a movie or something like that. But, that was his actual name, you know. So I don't know how that came to be, but, I guess it can happen, you know. If you can be Don Kirshner, you can be Harry Kirshner too, you know. So that's even double. You've got two names of God in your name, so. Yes, we have some questions in the back.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the nice class. About the names, I met the other day a person. He was from Azerbaijan or something like that, and his name was Bhakti, and I said, oh, this is just what we practice. This is how we call it, Bhakti Yoga, and he couldn't believe. So he had a full name, but this is how friends would call him.
I see.
Like
So they call him Bhakti for short?
Bhakti.
Get the microphone. I always find it so frustrating when I hear these comments on the videos and you can't hear anything. It's just like, whoa, 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 and everybody goes, ha, 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 ha. And you wonder, what did they say? You know? Okay, where's the microphone?
Thank you, Maharaj. I just want to quickly ask, so when Ajamil was calling his son Narayan, Narayan, what was his chant? What was the quality of that chanting?
That was, what we would call, again, Sanketa. He was using the name of Narayan, but he was indicating not Narayan, he was indicating his son. So that's Sanketa. Sanketa means, the usual example given in the scriptures is Muslims have this word called haram, which in the various Arabic, dialects, it indicates horrible. That's what it means. It means horrible. So they have this story about a man who was passing stool in the forest, and a wild pig happened to see that. And, pigs are attracted to stool. So the pig wanted to get the stool even before the man was finished passing it. So it came and it poked him with his tusks, and the man screamed, "Haram, haram," and he died, but he got the mercy of the holy name because he was saying ram. That was part of the syllable. So this is an example of Sanketa, chanting, but indicating something else other than the Supreme Lord. That's Sanketa. Hela is understanding it refers to the Supreme Lord, but just being spaced out, not being attentive. Yes, you.
In Malaysian language, butterfly is called Rama Rama.
What is it called?
Butterfly is called Rama Rama.
Oh, butterfly is called Rama Rama.
So we would go to them and we'd ask, what is butterfly called in your language? Rama Rama. What? Can you say again? Rama Rama. So Rama Rama. So they would repeat Rama Rama.
You know, or like that famous story where Narada Muni, or was it someone else that told Mrigari the hunter, because he couldn't chant Ram, so he told him to chant Mara, which is death. You know, of course, when you chant Mara, 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 Rama, you know, you're chanting the same thing because after a while it doesn't matter which one is first and which one's second.
Also, in same language, Ramadan or Ramzan is called the biggest festival of Muslims. It's called Hari Raya Pusa.
Right.
Madam, my question is, I don't know who is holding this, but Madam, I really did not understand little for the verse. That's it. So, what does it mean by self-realized soul is those reflected in threefold ego, then
Right,
body,
right.
sense and mind?
I'll tell you what I think it means. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, because I also pondered this when I was looking at this verse. So the self-realized soul is reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and mind. So what does it mean by threefold ego? I think it refers to this concept that we've been talking about for months now, you know, that when the material universe is generated, first thing that comes out is false ego. Then the false ego merges with the mode of goodness, and it produces demigods, and it merges with the mode of passion, it produces senses, and it merges with the mode of ignorance, and it produces the material elements. So the the self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the false ego and then in the body, mind, and senses. So Prabhupada seems to contrast these things. I think, you know, what's being indicated is the self-realized soul is apparently under this influence of, first of all, the threefold misery, not threefold miseries, but the threefold ego, which is ego and passion, ego and ignorance, ego and goodness. And then he's also bewildered by the body, mind, and senses as well. So it's more subtle when he's bewildered by the body, in the sense of the demigods in charge of the active organs of the body. Then he's also bewildered by the 10 senses, which are ego in passion. And then he's also bewildered by the material energy around him, which is the material world, the 8 energies: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these are, you know, bewildering him. And then he internalizes that with his own body, senses, and mind. So something like that. It's hard to know exactly what's being said there, but that's kind of how I read it, you know. And if he's really self-realized, then he's not bewildered by those things, and so he's cut away from them. Again, as an elucidation for the previous verse, which was 3:27:12, we heard, you know, Narada Muni said yesterday that the sun the Supreme Lord is like the sun, but it can be reflected. So the material world is real, but it's a reflection. But when we see it for what it is, connected to Krishna, we remove the reflection part. We actually see it as it really is, as the energy of the Lord meant to be offered back to the Lord. And so that's the basic conception here. And that's, if you look at Prabhupada's purport to this verse, that's basically what Prabhupada is up to. He's reiterating the fact that there's two kinds of ways to do it. One way is to think of everything as related to myself and my own desires and my ego and my body and my relatives and all that. The other way is to think everything is related to the Supreme Lord and how it could be used for the Supreme Lord, how it could be offered by the Supreme Lord, how it glorifies the Supreme Lord, etc., two diametrically opposite views. Anyway, it's the best I can offer. All right. And yeah, we have some questions. Sati has a question back there.
Hare Krishna. I don't know how to phrase it, but I want to know, is it, because we always think that others are like us, and like I tend to know I have that weakness of heart. I know when I'm doing something wrong, but I still do it wrong. I realize, I guess you were saying it's weakness of heart. So is it incorrect to think that others, if we see other devotees or even other people in general doing something that's incorrect, is it incorrect for us to think that they somehow know that what they're doing is wrong, but they're still doing it wrong? Or do some people just not know what they're doing is wrong at all?
Well, yeah, some people, if I understand your question correctly, that some people are doing things wrong and they don't know it's wrong, that there's less of an effect then. But at a certain...
I think they have that feeling inside, but they're just ignoring it.
Yeah.
And they're just, they're not...
Well, I think in most cases people don't actually focus in on it. Oftentimes we're a mystery even to ourselves. We don't even notice half the stuff that's going on in our own consciousness.
And you think it's the same way with other devotees? If we see another devotee acting in ways disturbing another
yeah.
They might not know that they're acting that way.
Yeah, right. So we are oblivious to what we're doing, and sometimes we're oblivious to the effect it has on other people. As a person advances in Krishna consciousness, we become more aware of what we are thinking and what we're really doing, and we become aware more of the effect it has on others. And that's kind of what you get the sense in the scriptures where we hear Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam Adhikari. That Kanishta understands very clearly the Supreme Lord and may have all kinds of religious sentiments and qualifications, but they're unable to perceive the Supreme Lord in other people. So they may be offensive and even, hostile to other people. And they don't recognize the incongruousness or now I can't get it, but that's incongruous. I'll just get to it in another type of grammatical structure. So it's incongruous with Krishna consciousness. But of course, as one rises to the platform of Madhyam Adhikari, somebody just gave class about this a day or two ago. I forget who it was. That you have Ishvare Tadadineshu Baliseshu Dusatsucha Prema Maitri Kripopeksha Yad Karoti Samadhyamaha. That the Madhyam Adhikari has 4 categories that he sees. One is the Ishvare, the Supreme Lord, Tadadineshu, those who are innocent but not fully informed. Tadadineshu is the devotees of the Lord, rather. And Baliseshu are those who are innocent but not in knowledge. And then the Dvisatsu, the envious. And he relates to them in 4 different ways. So, Ishvare Tadadineshu, Baliseshu, Dvisatsucha. Prema, so he tries to develop love for the Supreme Lord, Ishvare. Then he tries to prema maitri, he becomes friends with the devotees, and the kripa, he gives mercy to those who are bali seshu, those who are not very spiritually developed but are not envious, and then the envious or the he upeksha, he ignores them. So these are the categories of a madhyam. So he's friendly to those who are of equal status or devotees. He's merciful to those who are fallen but not envious. And he is worshiping the Supreme Lord, but at the same time he's upeksha, or he ignores those who are envious. So these are things that gradually become more and more revealed and installed in the character. So we learn what the qualities are of somebody in knowledge or someone who is a devotee, and gradually we begin to embody those things. Those have become our symptoms. So just as there are symptoms for knowledge, there are also symptoms for someone who is not in ignorance, or someone who is in a liberated stage, which is kind of what we're talking about here. All right, so thank you all very much for your kind attention. All glories to Srimad Bhāgavatam, all glories to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
The mind, because like you said, that's the